local. I don't know the reason why that, but you have to sort of be sort of thinking about that. Also important to realize, in generally, young people are killed by violence, and so you use a lot of adjusted life years. If you see just the hugest disparity in terms of in life loss in African Americans, you see that number is 6,000. No other number even comes close to that. And similarly, when you look at the Latino population, again, that's actually a pretty high and big important cause of the life loss in the city. And then lastly, when you look at HIV and AIDS, it's interesting in San Francisco because you will hear about communities of color, about HIV and AIDS, and if you heard anything, African Americans and Latinos are second. Well, anybody know why that might not be true in San Francisco and why? What do you know about San Francisco? Yeah, so we have a gay population and we still have, in that population, still has to be a little bit more Asians than others. And so that's why that disparity doesn't look the same. And why when the San Francisco Department of Health is putting a lot of push towards African Americans and stuff, but continually focuses on that really important local community and making sure that we're not missing the boat with them. And that, again, disparity. HIV/AIDS, if you really look at the real disparity, would be men have sex and men. Folks are using IV drugs and everybody else. So if you think about disparity differently, and that's generally, I think, how we try to think about it here. But, all right, HIV folks will give it to. Yes?
Oh, you said HIV.
And then HIV folks are about the difference in the list. I should say, feel free to ask questions all you want. I don't want you guys to listen to yourself. There's going to be a lot of talking about presentation. Break it up by asking questions, but we're going to leave that here because people talk about it. Another thing that's really common when we talk about disparities is sort of access to care. And a huge general disparity in the U.S. are for immigrant populations and largely Latinos not having insurance and not having a regular source of care. And so when you look nationally, this is percentage of men who have no personal doctor, so their usual source of care. You see that in the U.S. and in California, Latinos are huge for that. On the other hand, this is San Francisco. San Francisco is because this is not a disparity that we didn't have. This is just a disparity that we've focused a lot on. San Francisco has put a lot towards at least trying to take a lot of that insurance piece out. And so around 24% of the U.S. population doesn't have insurance. About 11% of the San Francisco population doesn't have insurance. And even for that group, we have started a program called Health in San Francisco to at least get them a primary care doctor. It's not insurance. It doesn't get them to be able to have all kinds of specialty care, but it's really been working with them. And you can see, again, they're higher, but they are not these huge disparities that you see. Interesting enough, in San Francisco, African Americans at least identify having a doctor. It might all come. Another way of thinking about is make sure you don't lose populations in your data. So we always put Asians and Pacific Islanders together. Well, here we have a large Samoan population, and we know that Samoan population has a lot of health risks and issues that doesn't seem to float with the general trend of Asians in the city, which is a largely Chinese majority, even though it's so diverse, it's so huge, it's very diverse, but their issues are different. And a perfect way of looking at this, and we don't have a lot of our local data that's breaking down with just Asians and Pacific Islanders in different slots. But if you looking at low birth weight babies by mother's race, you say, oh, African Americans are first. But if you take the Pacific Islanders out of Asian, they're actually second. And when you look at actually use of care, and we are definitely aware of this, receiving early prenatal care, and this is the least benign about it, Pacific Islanders do actually work in the city. So being aware of when you're mixing groups together, that sometimes you're going to actually lose the Pacific. This has really becomes true for both your Asian and your Latino population, where there's so many different cultures that get thrown into this massive mix of Asian or Latino. Something else to think about San Francisco is just the high cost of living. So this is a slide that basically says, what do you have to make to actually be able to keep yourself sustainable? Family of 4 in San Francisco would be called self-sufficiency standards. That means getting your children to school, you're getting your 2 children to school, eating, clothing them, and having a house. 52,000. And so you get a sense of, even though by everybody's standards, that's not a class, not particularly in a class scale. And when you have low wage standards, it means something between Francisco potentially in terms of your actually ability to make your money. That actually is related to the overall demographic trend. It costs less than in San Francisco, and so overall you have more adults and families with kids. So it's considered to have the overall economic thing. This is in the place of a city that has great actual social structure. So again, I told you about adult insurance. For kids, the insurance rate for children in San Francisco is 99.5%. We had, even this is after you guys might know, state Medicaid, this is before health reform. Their SHIP, which is supposed to be for low-income families, but they said the children of illegal immigrants would not be able to qualify for families because of all the programs given to make sure that kids could actually get insurance. So there's lots of social structures, but if you still can't afford to buy a house, you know, it's nice to have insurance, but you better have to do something. So this is where we are. This is Bayview Point. Now, who has actually spent any time in San Francisco before that? What parts did you hang out in? Royal Heights? Where did they get that from? Other places? Yeah. Lower Heights. Okay. So generally nobody ever comes over here except for actually going to. And I actually have 4 residents that are at least second-year residents that are here. You've been in Bayview before? So most folks haven't. I have to admit, I worked here I worked in San Francisco 3.5 years before I worked here. I came here once to actually visit my friend who ran his clinic, and I went to the 90s. And it is actually cut off from the city. Probably a highway down here. And these 2 highways, especially the 101, actually is the defining line of Bayview Hunters Point. You can actually see it. That's where they draw the line. And it takes some work to get across there. There are only so many buses that go that way. And so the main public transportation route, at least that they built for the T, you have to go all the way down this way and then come back in. So there is a sense of being cut off from the rest of the city being out here. And with that, I'm going to pass off to Dan, who's going to give you a little bit more background on Bayview Hunters Point and the clinic itself.